We're going to talk about getting laid at Burning Man. And by laid, we mean logistics, assets, infrastructure, and design, obviously. Duh. So I'd love to welcome Little Jack, and he's going to introduce our panelists. Let's give them a round of applause.
Yay, woohoo. Have a seat, guys. I'm going to sit in the middle. No, I'm going to sit in the middle. Okay. You can sit in the ends. Hi, I'm still Little Jack, and it's still wonderful to see you all. Thank you all for coming. I got to follow DA, so I think I need to go quiet because I can't out loud nobody can out loud DA. So this is getting laid, as Trippy said, logistics, assets. Many of us have tried to get laid at Burning Man, and as we all do, we learn by trial and error and error and error. So let's try to address some of those. The great thing is that throughout this weekend, there have been panels on logistics. We did one earlier on assets, on asset distribution, asset management. There's been tons of information on infrastructure and, of course, lots of stuff on design. So I'm going to start by introducing my panelists, asking a brief question. Microphone is there. Mostly we want to hear from you guys because we've all been talking about this all weekend anyway, and we want to get more questions and give more insight. So to my right, your left, is Fixer, who runs Root Pile. They bring live bluegrass music and southern food and culture to the playa. And expert in logistics, to my left, your right, is Drew from a camp whose name changes often, but is Burning Melon in general, and they have nice melons. Expert also on assets. So he also runs the Shy Cargo program, where you can bring cargo from Chicago to playa, as well as done some interesting things with asset management and incorporation, which we'll talk about. And on my far left is CrowBob, who runs Lavender Lounge and is the smallest of the camps up here, which is great because, as was mentioned earlier, most of us are small camps, and it's good to get that insight. So I'm going to start by asking each of you one question as opposed to asking a question to the whole panel to answer, because I want to give as much time as possible for you guys and for the live stream. Live stream, please type your questions, and the doc team will answer us. So CrowBob, tell us a little bit about how you manage your infrastructure. Tell us about the size of your camp and tell us about your infrastructure and how you manage it. Yeah, just turn the switch on upwards. There you go, leave it, and now talk into it. Is it on? No. Here, take this one, swap me.
You make that one work. Yeah, we have a small camp of 25 people. And I became the lead about 8 years ago when somebody burned out, and who was going to do it? I kind of raised my hand, and suddenly I was the camp lead. So we got to do everything, you know. We build, we tear down, we set up the Lavender Lounge and do the treatments at the Lavender Lounge, and we all have to work together or it sucks. So it's critical.
What is your infrastructure? Camp. Can this one be made a little bit less hot, please? Can this one be turned down a tad? Tell us about your infrastructure, shade structure,
okay,
your offering.
That has grown over years. About 3 years ago, I thought, a giant parachute would be wonderful. We got a giant parachute. Somebody donated it to us. That didn't work. It about blew away and took some RVs with it. So we've changed that into the 10 by 10 shade structures made out of EMT and 10 by 10 tarps, very modular, and we keep adding those as we need in whatever shape we have. We have a lounge tent, which is probably about 20 by 40. That poor thing has been around for about 15 years, getting kind of old and shaggy, and Then we have a small cook tent, which is essentially one of those car structures from Costco, and maybe 1 or 2 RVs, depending upon who shows up.
Thanks. So, Fixer, I hear you have a nice short drive and not much stuff to bring. So if you guys haven't seen Root Pile, it is a significant undertaking. Lots of classes, great stage, lots of great tunes, big pot of yummy. Anyway, tell us a little bit about your logistics, how you get it all there, what you do with it, and some insights for people who might not have been at the breakout.
Well, we used to bring everything 3,200 miles from North Carolina, and so every year for 8 years, I guess, I would bring a little more, bring a little more. Now we have like 14 different units, trailers, and 2 semis, several trailers, water trailer, gray water trailer. We bring about 1,000, we bring 1,500 gallons of fresh water in, and we have 1,000-gallon capacity of gray water that we can dump off-playa on an orchard that some friends of ours have. So we deal a lot with OSS not a lot, but we deal with OSS transport to bring our semis in, and we bring all our other trailers in through the main gate, which was a bit of a challenge last year because I don't know if y'all agreed, but the main gate was a little slow during build last year. Took quite a while to get all this stuff in. So that's a challenge, but we're up to it. How do we get it there? Where do we have it? It's all pretty much stored in Empire and Gerlach area. There's quite a few storage options there, and you can use OSS transport to bring your trailers in. Mostly large trailers, but there's also some OSS transport vendors that'll bring your smaller trailers in if it's not something you have the capacity to do. So we found that storing there is way better than like storing in Fernley or Reno. We have to unload, load, unload, unload. So I think having your stuff in trailers, where you can get to it is important.
Thanks. Drew, you also come from a ways away. Tell us your distance story, and then I want to ask you about how you handled incorporation and why, and how you do with the assets.
Yeah, those two are pretty closely tied together. The first 7 years that I went to Playa, drove from Chicago, round trip. Fun fact, if you drive from Chicago to BRC and back 7 times, that is just a little bit longer than driving around the entire Earth. And it's so much more boring because you spend most of that time in Nebraska. But in those 7 years, started with like a ride share from the ride board in an old Prius. Worked our way up to the largest truck you can rent without a CDL, a 26-foot straight truck or a box truck. It is
commercial driver's license. Go ahead.
Thank you. That 26-foot truck, and I'm sure some of you have driven them before, they are terrifying. It's basically a semi-truck, and it's a weird loophole that civilians like us are allowed to just rent them and drive them 2,000 miles. But after that year, we decided we kind of needed to go pro, and for us, that meant purchasing a 48-foot semi-trailer, and that was also the sort of the nudge, the impetus that we needed to say, hey, we should put something a little more formal in place, limit the liability of people who had just been putting stuff on, personal credit cards under their name, that sort of thing. So we consulted with a few different people in our community, weighed the sort of pros and cons of a 501c3 versus an LLC versus something sort of more exotic. Went with the relatively simple LLC, knowing that, if we changed our mind later, we could sort of upgrade to like a nonprofit structure. And at that same time, to sort of subsidize the cost of hiring a professional driver to drive that semi-truck there and back, we also started the Shy Cargo regional shipping program. I should know these stats offhand, but in 2018, we shipped something like 160 bins on behalf of 80 people, donated something like $1,200 to the local burn nonprofit in the Chicago area. And it's a service that has worked out really, really well, for the camp that helps run it with volunteer hours, and the community that really, really loves a convenient, cost-effective, reliable way of getting stuff from Chicago, like all the way onto the Playa.
Thanks. How many of you live in a place that you know of has a cargo program or a regional shipping program? I'm seeing about half a dozen hands go up. That's awesome. There's opportunities out there. So at this point, there's no one in line. So if you have questions, please stand in line for the microphone and ask our esteemed panel. Otherwise, I'll start with another question. Go for it.
Hi guys, my name's Jordy. I have this really large art project with an art support camp, and I'm looking at possibly 14 to 18 48-foot trailers from Oakland to Reno. So my first time loading trailers. So this is the first part of my question. Could you please share some tips on efficiency? So I have to have maybe less trailers. And then also I'm going to have, this is my first time I'm going to have a camp. And
Okay, wait, hold on. Jordy has been burning for many years, so he's not as new as he wants you all to think. He's been doing this a long time, but now he's our temple builder.
Gordy,
yes, cat's out of the bag.
Gordy, you need to change your name, change your face. Don't look back.
Yeah, I've been trying to keep it low key, but it's a fact. I'm building the temple. I'm trying to get some more information.
Can we just pause?
And so, as far as building a camp, like I usually camp with the Black Rock Roller Disco. We have like minimal infrastructure. And what are your viewpoints on a successful amount of infrastructure? What's too much? What's too little? What's like the sweet spot? You know, I'd really like some information on that.
How many people?
It could potentially be about 125 people.
Are you going to build your camp at Temple first and then move it, or what are you?
Well, yeah, we have to do that. We have to have one camp at the Temple build site, and then we go back to the city because we're not allowed to camp on the playa during the event.
Wow.
Um,
I was okay. For loading, I think you should definitely get professionals to help you load the trailers and cinch everything down properly, because that's a big thing. You know, get maybe a Burning Man OSS transport guy to help you, because you'll not only save space, but it'll be safer not to mess up your load. But that's a lot of trailers. How many? 48?
No, between 14 and 18.
Oh, that ain't no big deal. So it's not really. Lauren has way more than that. Anyway, so, but you know, you already know this if you're building the temple, that you'll have some better options than we do for getting your stuff in. You'll be able to get it. You're going to use an OSS transport, probably. You'll get it in earlier. You won't have to pay the fees. And so, like, typically, OSS transport, you can't come in till Thursday. They're going to start letting OSS transport guys bring trailers
August
in
9th, yeah.
McKinley Park on Thursday. So you're going to probably have to use one of the local transport guys to do that. But the camp side, man, I don't know. Better find you some people who know how to build a Burning Man camp and forget about that part for you.
So
I'm
this
serious,
panel, the
you know,
DUSB delegation.
Yeah. You concentrate on the temple, and you get some other people to build your camp, is what I would suggest. And for 120 people, you're probably going to need showers. You're going to need a couple thousand gallons of water. You're going to need some serious love is what you're going to need.
Yeah. So I think some like general things that my camp has learned the hard way that I think apply to you and maybe a lot of other people, just sort of off the top of my head. I think it's really important to clearly delineate the packing, transport, and storage of like camp-owned infrastructure and personal items. And it's like the easiest gray area. It's like the easiest, like, oh man, he's a buddy, he's a leader, he's a whatever. Hold that line. It'll really, really help when it comes time for packing, strike, all of that. Another one that's really good, and this is like a sort of rule of thumb, that the time and energy it takes to pack the first 80% is the same amount of time and energy it takes to pack the last 20%. So when you're doing the math of, I got 1,000 cubic feet, I'm going to put 1,000 cubic feet of stuff in that. Like, unless you really have it dialed in, give yourself at least 20% leeway. Otherwise, there's tremendously diminishing returns.
Is everything going to be on flatbeds or on dry vans?
Ideally flatbeds.
Okay, well, talk to me. I can help you out there probably.
Okay, sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Can we just get Jordy a round of applause for taking on this project?
No, guys, no. It's all right. No.
I'm Joshua Tree, and I come through Red Lightning, a big Esplanade theme camp with a lot of stuff. And to talk about this in the Getting Laid session is a true miracle. I'm going to tie a couple things together, and especially Candy asked this question about turd polishing in RVs. And I want to say something I feel really clearly. I'm now an operations lead for BlackRock Labs. We have an opportunity as a community in the next 3 years for our entire city to move to being primarily powered by solar with batteries backed up by generators, 100,000%. That begins this year with us now taking the next step we can do to modify our infrastructure. We're going to share a lot about that with the BlackRock Labs through the new resource partner page and the ridiculous resource map with Burners Without Borders. Those two things coming together, we can see it all. But let's look at the RVs for one thing. I want to ask a question. Turd polishing. RVs in a camp are many structural problems, but I want to say that not only are they a core set of problems, they're a core set of solutions. And we focus not just on the cultural side of the open, but on the energy. Not only is it a turd, it's like a steaming pile of compost, fertile ground for transformation. And there's two things I want to say that change everything. In a camp, the energy system of the theme camps, regardless of size, is actually a pretty simple power equation. The gift, however elaborate, will be its own thing. The RVs are one of the core problems, energetically. We're pumping over big cables, 30 amps, to RVs that sit in the sun, fighting the sun with air conditioning and AC. That is an energetic compost pile. Two things, shade the RVs. The best thing to shade the top of the RVs is solar panels on the top. Every RV, not the camps, go to the owners, upgrade your batteries. Now we're not refilling AC on 30 amp cables from generators where over there we're feeding batteries that feed the AC, and we are shading the RV. Simply a rack on the top of every RV with 18 inches. Automatically, it's a passive win, and now every RV is an asset to the camp grid that we're backing up. The second part, shade the RVs with fabric. Top with solar, whatever you have, start shading the outside of the RVs. You don't need the same amount of energy to then cool them, and you have an opportunity to make it, I use this technical term, super fucking pretty.
Is
So
there a question for the panel? Because this is great
I
stuff.
bring it back to it. So my question is, structurally, the RVs, bringing generation and shading them is a core solution to making it pretty, open, immersive, and a power problem. Those two things, shading the RVs.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Is there a question for the panel? Let's keep it moving with other people.
So, question for y'all. Many of you have had almost a decade's worth of experience now, many decades on this panel, of dealing with various shipping and transportation options. Most likely one of those options at one point in time was you ran a box truck and you had storage somewhere. What was the pain point that moved you from box truck and a storage unit in somebody's like garage or in Reno or somewhere else that then got you from that solution where you were running trucks from U-Haul or Ryder to investing in a container or investing in a dry van or a reefer? What was that point, and then how did you convince your camp leadership to, let's say you have a camp lead, I'm not going to name names, his name is Boz, who is very recalcitrant about shipping and transportation and doesn't listen to his build and logistics lead.
Well, for me it was 2015 where we brought a large Penske out from North Carolina and brought it all the way to Playa, unloaded it, took it all the way back to Fernley, loaded it up again, brought it back to Playa, unloaded it, meant to take it back to Reno, but ran out of time completely. It sat there on Playa, and I had a $1,600 bill for the extra days that I hadn't planned for, and that was a pretty good wake-up call for me, like, nah, that shit ain't gonna fly. So having something of our own, or having a trailer that's brought to you from Pro to your camp, unload it, burn, load it back, goes away, you're done. That double unloading stuff of truck into storage unit and truck, blah, 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 blah. Fucking nightmare.
I would venture a guess and say that part of the hurdle is financial, to be quite honest. the way that my camp overcame that is, we had a small group of people that gave the camp essentially 0 interest loans. I can loan the camp X number of dollars for Y years. I can loan the camp A number of dollars for B years. I think something that's sort of more wrapped up there has to be the other side of the equation to, we're not going to pack and unpack 4 times a year. We're just going to do it twice. And when we're on playa and we put something stupid like a piece of conduit in its own little cubby hole, like it's not going to move until we're back here next year taking it out. I think those 2 sides of the coin are what could maybe in your situation make it happen.
All right, got time for one more question.
Hello, I am Opal from Dustfish, and it's wonderful to be here. I'm enjoying this so much. My question has to be with has to do with parking, and parking seems to be an issue. And it was really nice when we had parking spots, or places that we can put the cars. That worked out really well, and people that needed their car with them, that worked out pretty good. But last year was really tough to camp and park in the same spot that we were allowed. Is there any plans to bring back a parking lot? Because I really feel
that's
we
actually
need
a question
them.
for placement.
Okay.
This is not placement.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, good.
But I can tell you that part of the reason they did away with that parking was because it just got trashed. People taking craps next to their cars, and dumping crap everywhere, and it was a nightmare. And that's, I think, why it's not happening right now.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So, last thoughts from the panel. CrowBob, infrastructure, logistics, design, assets?
Well, we started bringing up everything in a 28-foot travel trailer, and that just didn't work out after it was really unsafe pulling that thing with the weight of 150 gallons of water and so forth. We bought a 16-foot box truck, and we store everything in that off-playa at somebody's backyard, essentially, and that works for us in a small camp.
Great, thank you. We're actually out of time. Sorry, guys. I just was flashed the sign, and we want to keep it moving because we want to honor all of your time and all the efforts that everyone's put into this. So, Fixer, Drew, CrowBob, thank you.